Next up, we have Nina Cortes.
So being Asian American is a little complicated, right? We all come from different places, but we also arrive at different conclusions. And the conclusion that I'm at right now is that I can't take anything for granted, which is something I've been doing for so many years of my life. So growing up, I thought I was a really normal kid until I went to grade school. I realized that I looked a little different, so actually I was going to be treated different. And that made me uncomfortable. And like any other normal kid out there, I longed to be comfortable, so I assimilated. But the thing is about being okay with being comfortable is that it's dangerous for every person because it stops you from learning. Case in point, Japanese school for 9 years. Going to Japanese school made my mom really happy, and it made me happy as long as I got to color and I got to sing. But as soon as coloring and singing turned into testing, reading, writing, exams, and studying, I hated it. And I took Japanese school for granted. What was the point of going to Japanese school when all my friends spoke English and they weren't going to understand Japanese culture? And I lived in the US. Nobody would care. But then fast forward 7 years later, during my last 2 years of Japanese school, when I started maturing, I realized that I was taking something for granted, and it was something that I can't get back in 1 to 2 years. So I started taking it seriously. We went from a class of about 25 to 30 kids in the first grade to only 5 of us left standing on the stage on graduation day. And what I had to do was simple. All I had to do was read my graduation speech in front of everyone there. So the entire student body, the teachers, the staff, the parents, no big deal. But then when it came to the last section of the speech, all I had to say was my thank yous. I say, arigatou okasan, which means thank you, mom. But that's the moment when I thought about everything that she sacrificed for me and the idea that I was taking something, a blessing, for granted. So I had this huge lump in my throat, and it was an overwhelming sense or feeling of regret and gratitude. And this is a really embarrassing story, but what I ended up doing was for the next 2 minutes, I cried on stage in front of everyone. And then I finished my speech. So this story, looking back, is an embarrassing story, but it's also symbolic, and it's the epitome of what I think I struggled with my entire life, which is feeling as if I'm in this limbo, which I think so many of us Asian Americans can relate with. We struggle, or we are constantly in this limbo between tradition and culture and assimilation. And the reason why it's so difficult is because we don't like being uncomfortable. We want to be comfortable and assimilate. But see, the thing about assimilation, again, is that it stops you from learning. Right now, when I came into college, I chose my major as literally Spanish because it bothered me so much that I couldn't speak Spanish to my grandmother on my father's side. If you apply this concept to a little bit larger and apply it to your neighbors, it makes a lot more sense. You stop liking the person that you're next to because they're different if you stay with a type of mind where you don't bother to ask them questions or you're not okay with something being different. But what I do want for you all to understand from my story is that it's okay to be different. It's okay if your neighbor's different. What you have to do is you have to be okay with learning. And once you realize that there's nothing wrong with learning about other people's cultures, other people's traditions, different societies, it will really change your outlook on the way you view everything. And the world will become a little bit more of a beautiful and colorful place.